You are listening to Portals Podcast, an extension of the Emergence Creative Space. My name is Scott Love, and today my guest has one of the most inspirational stories to share. With an education that combines world religions, philosophy, social justice, and women's studies, her life's work has been to help steer society and culture to a more spiritually principled and sustainable way of being. In this episode, part one of a three-part series, she shares the story of her path leading up to being who she is today. She shares a few personal stories, and we catch a glimpse as to what molded her into being the strong, confident leader that she is today. I'm happy to introduce you to Lisa Adams. Lisa is a renowned teacher, speaker, and life coach that specializes in helping her clients clear away the burdens and stories that keep them from creating the lives and world of their dreams. You can find her work at www.therenegademystic.com. Parts 2 and 3 of this series will be released independent of one another a couple days apart. A full-length episode that includes all three parts will be released in its entirety, first to the patrons and subscribers of Emergence Creative Space, and then it can be found on www.emergencecreativespace.com. I'm excited to share our conversation with you. All right, let's get inspired. You're listening to Portals Podcast, an extension of the Emergence Creative Space. Listeners are transported into the hearts and minds of some of the most inspired creators, producers, artists, and activists around. Portals is a platform and a spotlight on people, organizations, businesses, and more who are the unsung heroes making a huge impact on the lives of others. My name is Scott Love, and I will be your host on this journey into the powerful world of intention and conscious creation. I am an activist, an entrepreneur, and a visionary. Over the years, I've made some incredible relationships with a lot of truly epic people. Many have helped inspire me and have guided me on my journey. I believe they'll help you as well. Here's what's up. We are a people in transition. The choices we make now will affect lives for generations to come. Our choices will be our legacy. I want Portals Podcast to be a go-to resource for those who are searching for solutions and to help us move us all forward. Thanks for being here. All right, let's get inspired. All right, if you're listening to this, then chances are you like podcasts. And there's also a good chance that you've thought about creating your own podcast. Well, I'll tell you what, it's really easy. Well, Anchor's made it easy. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you don't have to go through any third parties or spend hours a week trying to get your stuff uploaded. And you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and there's a whole slew of others. And what's really sweet about Anchor that a lot of others don't provide you is that you can start making money with your podcast just about right away with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need a podcast to be in one place. And what I really like about it is that you can create your podcast right from your page without having to do it anywhere else. So download the Anchor app or go to anchorfm.com. All right, here's to being inspired. Record on this computer. Bam, there we are. Lisa Adams, how are you?
Hi, Scott. I'm great. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is exciting. It's exciting. I'm happy you could connect with us such short notice. We just had our first conversation about making it happen about a week ago, and now here we are. Where are you right now?
I'm in my home in Stanton, Virginia, which is in the Shenandoah Valley. So this valley is nestled between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Alleghenies.
Oh, nice. That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
The Alleghenies?
The Allegheny Mountains are the rows and rows and rows of mountains that when we think of like West Virginia, and it's just mountains as far as the eye can see. So that's just west of me.
And there's a famous song about Shenandoah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's been a weird world this last little bit.
Weird's a nice way of putting it. It's really been one of my closest people keeps using the word bizarre.
Bizarre, yes.
Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it. I think we're doing okay though. I think people had a lot of fear and they had a lot of anxiety, And rightfully so, because they were being told over and over and over again that this is such a bad thing. But we really came through with not freaking out. Maybe a few did.
Well, I think there is a lot more going on than just COVID. I mean, we're watching the crumbling apart of our institutions and the systems that we've all been part of and that we've come to know as being our society. And even though most of us have been like awake enough and aware enough to understand that those things aren't really working or serving us or not really compassionate or sustainable, that COVID has kind of brought everything to its knees. And I think that's part of the fear that's happening. And, we're kind of riding all these waves. It's almost like being on some kind of crazy, whacked out, like sort of amusement park ride. You have no idea if you're going to turn right or left or go up or down or enter into some like dark wormhole. I mean, it's
Right.
just, yeah, it bizarre kind of suits where we're at.
Right. And speaking of roller coasters, it's usually towards the end after you've been on the roller coaster for a few minutes that you relax and you get used to it. And then just when you start getting used to it, the ride's over.
Uh,
Right on?
yeah, so maybe I like that you brought that up because maybe that means as we're starting to get used to this, that maybe it's going to get a little better somehow soon or yeah, be over. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be over. I think we still got a ways to go to get through all of this.
Yeah. Well, I think we've learned that as a community, how to take precautions. There was a lot of denial for a while and a lot of fear, and people act out when they're in fear and they don't necessarily make the best choices. But I think that we're starting to learn now that the safety precautions have become social norms, and we're figuring out that there are treatments. We're figuring out about having healthy immune systems. That's the most important thing. If you don't want your body to be ravaged by COVID, then eat better. Quit smoking. Do exercise. Eat your vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C. Get your oxytocin levels up if you can, because oxytocin, the hormone that being in love releases and being in fear decreases. So let's get our oxytocin levels up, and that inspires a healthier immune system too. So letting go of the fear, getting your faces out of the media, and doing things like creating programs and projects and being with people that we love. That's what's up. I think that's how we're going to get through it. Yeah, and some of the solutions they're talking about don't necessarily turn me on at all. Like I'm not going to be all anti-vax here, but I'm tentative. Let's just say I'm tentative and leave it at that.
I think that's a really good word to use. My kind of approach to that is a wait and see approach. Like I
Right.
want to kind of step back for a while and watch and see how it all unfolds and how people are doing with it before I make an ultimate decision about it. So yeah, I I frankly have a hard time trusting some of the systems that are in place. And so to kind of take a sacred pause and to witness and to watch feels like the right way to go for me.
Yeah, a sacred pause. I like that. I like that. And that's exactly what this is. It's the opportunity to get with ourselves and get with God. I've been much more spiritual lately since the last few months. It seems like we go to God in spirit when we have things we need support with. If we don't have things that we need support with, then maybe it's not a part of our everyday. At least I could say for me, or when I'm creating something, I do it with spirit. But I think a lot of people are now thinking about spirit, and we're definitely thinking about death more than we did 6 months ago.
For me, spirit and spirituality is part of my everyday. I don't see that there's any separation between like spirit and magic and that side of the world versus like the mundane everyday. To me, it's all the same thing. And I've been in that place for quite a long time now. So it's wonderful that to me, there's no division or separation between that. Like everything is sacred. Every act we take, like everything matters. And like you mentioned, we're more aware of death, much as in a way that's kind of a bummer. I actually think ultimately that it's really wise because when we're more aware of the preciousness of life and how short it is and how quickly it can end, I think we value things. There's more reverence. We have more appreciation for, especially for the people that we love. And I mean, I'm missing people so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
oxytocin, I'm like, yes, please. I live alone. I don't get to see that many people or interact, or, I don't get enough touch. That makes it harder. It just does. Makes it harder.
And then the flip side of that is it also makes us sit with ourselves for an extended period of time. It's like if it's that love. Yeah, I miss all that too. I miss hugs and I miss festivals. Oh my goodness, a whole summer without any shows at all. Not a single hug from a distant friend. No getting on Facebook and being like, hey, are you going to be at this? And they're like, yes, I am. All right, cool. Well, let's camp in the same area.
I miss that too. I mean, I have had my festival circuit all kind of squared away and worked out, and the things I was teaching, and the plans to camp and do all the things. And that's one of the things I really look forward to when the weather gets warmer. And, that's when you get to see all the people, and it's kind of like reunions all over the place. So I miss that too. There's a kind of local to me festival that takes place just outside of Washington, D.C., called Interfusion. And that one takes place over Martin Luther King Jr. weekend in January. And so that's the only festival that I got to go to this year. It was great, but it's an indoor festival, a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds of people kind of having to be in close space. There's no way something like that can happen right now.
Right, right. A friend of mine was inspired from the Interfusion event and created an event here in Michigan called Manifestation. And the way to hear her talk about that event really makes me want to go. And just the people and the connections and the network that I heard exists there is definitely something to show for. I'm always out there trying to connect good people with 3DL and 3 Days of Light, and to keep it fresh energy, fresh people. The more of us that connect at these different events, so I feel like it gets stronger and stronger. And here's what's really cool. Okay, I don't think that the relationships or the connections are going to suffer. If anything, I think on the flip side, we're going to be even stronger with them. Because we're gonna be like, when we next time we see them, it's not gonna be like, oh, so good to see you, and we kind of only half mean it. We're really gonna mean it. We're gonna be like, oh my god, come here, give me a hug, and we don't let them go for 10 minutes. And there's gonna be like giant group hugs everywhere. It's gonna be crazy.
I've made a point with certain people that I want to make sure to nurture those connections, to do check-ins, whether that's like on Zoom or, long phone calls, and, just really, how are you? Like, what is going on in your life? And making sure to do some of that. I don't want to lose those threads,
Right.
rather strengthen and at least be able to draw closer and get to know each other in more depth. And so that when we can get together, it's going to be even richer.
Right. There's a very therapeutic aspect to that too, personally. I have always had this, I think everyone has, and I'm really figuring out another language to use. In the past, I would have said, I have a history of depression, but I don't really have a history of depression. I have emotions that throughout my youth have gone up and down, way peaky, way valleys, high peaks, low valleys. And when I'm down, it's because I'm self loathing or I'm completely self conscious. Self being the word. But when we intentionally reach out to other people, intentionally, that kind of takes that away. A friend of mine is actually the one who turned me on to this, where I was having a pretty serious, about 20 years ago, a really serious bout with like not wanting to do anything for months and months and months. I was heartbroken, and my father just passed away, and I was like stuck in this cycle where I even started taking medications for it. My friend said, what I would do, what he does is he intentionally gets out of himself. He intentionally reaches out to other people and asks them only about them.
before he even shares about what's going on with himself. That way his heart is filled with all the things other people are doing, what they're celebrating, and that in turn helps him and then helped me once I started doing that. Just really, first of all, appreciating them and realizing that I'm not the only one, that I'm not alone, that I do have friends. So yeah, man, that point you're talking about there, being intentional of staying connected to people, that's huge. I wonder if the people that are home sad and feeling isolated are taking that step.
I wonder too, because like a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling really down and kind of depressed. And I realized I needed my people. I was kind of almost like walling off a bit, kind of, being more isolated, not necessarily on purpose, but, it's just like, wait a minute. And that helped me to shift out of that. And just like what you were saying, it made a huge difference, huge difference. People afforded me so much love and grace when I shared what was heavy on my heart. And that made all the difference for me.
Right. Yes, yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So, what about professionally? How have you had to adjust professionally?
Well, that's a great question because I've sort of been making some adjustments prior to COVID to doing more work online and, even teaching some workshops online. I do healing work and life coaching. So I had already started doing some of that work like through Zoom and online and over the Ethernet. But then when COVID hit, it really helped me to place more emphasis on that and to put more structures and systems in place within my own business to make sure that I'm really making the most of this. And I like the in-person work, but I'm aware that this is a magic portal. Like this exists between all time and space. And so why not use it as the magic portal it is? Because when we do things within a magic portal, it still has this ripple effect that in some cases can be a bigger ripple effect than being just one-on-one. And then another thing that's kind of been good about it too is it's like another level of sort of boundary, like healthy boundary, where we don't have to get enmeshed in each other's like stuff or energy, which when you're doing healing work and you're a sensitive, empathic person, it's easier to kind of get hooked into people's stuff and maybe over identify. So
Right.
it adds a layer there.
It's interesting because as soon as you said that, I started thinking about when you're in somebody's physical space, you're dealing with sense, you're dealing with body language, which in many ways help you read somebody. In fact, play a huge part of it. There's pheromones, and those affect your chain. They affect and alter you a little bit. But when we're using this, it's right here, it's right in front of each other. We get to be with each other almost more and more cleanly in a way. In some ways, it takes a lot of the distraction out, and you can't really look around. You can't look to the floor. You can't fiddle with things because you're face to face. You can't avoid it, and it's really clear when somebody's avoiding something. You're like, oh, you're hiding something. What is that?
Well, it's been a great opportunity for me to segue more of my work towards this sort of technological medium and being more online, doing that kind of thing. Even though I'm much more of a hands-on person, I don't feel like I'm a real tech savvy. I'm learning more and more all the time. I've already been doing some stuff before, so it's helped me to transition more to this online world. And I think what's great about that too is it gives us a larger platform, right? Like I can connect with somebody on the other side of the world and do work with them in person through this medium. So that's exciting. So, so there are some of those kinds of
Right.
benefits, even if I miss some of the in-person stuff, but I found a way to do small, intimate, in-person like workshops and gatherings, find an outside space or venue that's safe and private, and keep the numbers very small, make sure everybody's spaced apart. I bring the hand sanitizer and the gloves and the wipes and the things and encourage people with their masks. There's still the intimacy of being in person, and that's worked really well. I'm not doing a lot of that, but I'm doing a few of those, and I'm being really cautious about how many people and encouraging everybody to being their integrity and all of that too.
That's
So.
very cool. That's very. So people don't just arrive at being healers and teachers on the level that you're teaching. There's usually a path that has led them to where they are. The good teachers, and that's a difference between, life and experience and the road that we traveled to get here really helps us become good teachers. Because otherwise we're just teaching theory. We're not really teaching application. And you obviously have had an amazing story that has led you to just your energy, the presence, the confidence that tells us that isn't, maybe it is born into somebody, as far as you're born into the life you live, or the path you're on. What was it like for you before you found this path, or was spirituality something that was always present?
I would not say it was always present for me. I mean, part of my story is that I grew up in a typical dysfunctional suburban family, the child of divorce and remarriage and all of that, and I had a younger brother, but the dysfunction in the family really affected me. And so when I hit my teen years, I was acting out. And I was skipping school and partying and partying and partying and skipping school and, not behaving. And, for as much as I got in trouble, I probably got away with a good 80% of what I was doing at the time. But, at the time, my mom and my stepdad, they were having problems and they weren't able to be present, for me in the way I needed. And eventually they kicked me out of the house. So I've been on my own since I was 16.
Wow. Yeah. Very similar,
yeah.
Very similar story.
Wow, really?
And, but yeah, trouble, and then a little more. But it was fun. I thought it was fun. And it was fun for where I was, That's why I can relate with people, young people specifically who get in trouble. I can be like, you know what? It's going to get better if you want it to be. Because with that trouble comes challenge and pain.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that part of why I was doing all of those things was acting out. I was very defiant. I had unhealed pains and unmet needs emotionally and nurturing and stuff from the family I wasn't getting. And so it's just kind of like seeking out and acting out and probably seeking their attention. But all I got instead was,
Right.
And eventually they kicked me out, and I decided not to ever return back to the house. Even after a while, they're like, well, if you want to come back. And I was like, no, that wasn't working for any of us.
Right.
So that was huge, because there I was on my own. I lived in a boarding house that my grandmother had, and it's really dark, depressing place to be. And here I was this young woman. I wasn't even a woman. I was a girl on my own and living in this place. There was some scary dudes living there and stuff. And so it was not a great situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really lonely. But I started asking those big existential questions, why did that happen? What, in my mind, why don't my parents love me? But also what is all this about? Why me? Why do I have to go through this? And what's my purpose here on earth? And just kind of started asking those questions. And then little bit by little bit, there would be more and more, and kind of got a hold of some cool books and got sort of interested in a bunch of different kinds of spirituality, and then found the things that really started to land for me, the things that did it for me. And meditation and singing devotional songs or bhajans, kirtan and that sort of thing. So those were some of the things that I found a little bit early on. I still partied though for quite some time, and I still was quite the partier, and then actually I got arrested for drinking and driving. I had a bag of weed in my pocket. I got in a lot of trouble, and that was the best thing. Yeah, best thing that could have ever happened to me. I had just turned 21. At the time, I was really angry and upset about it, but I kind of quickly, it humbled me, and I realized through that whole experience that I'm responsible for myself and for what happens. I'm responsible for the actions I take and the consequences of those. And I needed that lesson
For
because
sure.
I just, I kind of thought maybe the world owed me and I had a chip on my shoulder and all of that. Oh, I got brought back down to the ground really fast.
Yeah. I had my drunk driving when I was 23, and so not that much older than you were. And I'm blessed I've only gotten the one. After that, I didn't drink and drive anymore. And I knew before that it was dumb, and thank goodness I was just above the limit. Um, but lifestyle for me was partying quite a bit, and I was in and out of recovery a lot in my 20s. And the 12 steps of the recovery programs really did a lot as far as helping me find a spiritual path. Because it was my father used to take me to Unity Church, so it was New Thought. There's a lot of out there spiritual belief systems with Unity, at least according to the standard fare when it comes to Christianity. And so between Unity Church, a lot of books, like you mentioned, and the 12-step programs, that's where a lot of my core spiritual belief programming comes from.
Well, I thank goodness for those kinds of big things that happen in life because when, I'm 51 now, so I can look back on all of these like major pivotal events like that, like when something bad happened or something went wrong, how ultimately those were like course corrections that helped me to be in a better place and to get happier and healthier and to learn some serious lessons. So I've come to the point in life where I know that if something doesn't turn out like maybe the way I want it to, or something bad happens, that I'm immediately looking for what's the lesson, and I know that the universe has my back, and it's a course correction. Like it's, Lisa, you're playing too small, or you're not being in your integrity, and it's time to get on track.
Very good. The name of your project is The Renegade Mystic.
Yes.
Right. Speak to that if you would.
Okay, so from the word go, even as a little kid, my mom would always be like, oh, you were always pretty like headstrong and stubborn. And then later on, the word was rebellious. That was my teen years. And then later on, it was, I'm very independent. In the last maybe decade, maybe more than a decade, after going through like divorce and stuff and being just really on my own more, I came to see that I kept trying to play according to like the rules, like you should do this, you should do that. You're supposed to get an education and get a job and get married and have a house and kids and do like the whole American dream.
Right.
And even when I did that, I wasn't happy. And I felt like I was living my life doing the things I should do, but they weren't filling me up. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And when after my divorce and I started trying to figure out like, what do I want to do with my life? I realized that the more I lived in integrity to who I am at my core, and the more I don't follow whatever those rules are or do all the people pleasing or the things that my parents, want me to do, like all of those narratives that we have, the things that society says we should do, I'm so much happier and freer as a result. So there's kind of that idea that floats around, especially in maybe like the new age or spiritual communities, about like the matrix. And so I kind of understand like the matrix as being society wants us to kind of fit in these neat little boxes and be good little consumers and that sort of thing. And that doesn't make me happy. That makes me feel caged in. It doesn't make me feel alive. I don't want or need a bunch of stuff. I don't want to be carrying around a bunch of debt and working it off for the rest of my life. I want to be more free. I want to move around. I want to do cool things with cool people.
Right. Yeah, that's what's up, man. Being okay. So there was a point when you were just venturing off into this path here, and I'm getting that happened post divorce, or was it something that led to the divorce? Was your awakening process, or how did all that fit together?
Well, I had definitely been still doing a lot of very spiritual things during my marriage. We were part of a pagan community
Okay.
and serving as a priestess, a high priestess, and he would work with me in that regard. So when we split up and things just weren't working, I had to really just stop and ask myself, because I didn't even know the answers. Like, what do I want? What's going to make me happy? And it's been this beautiful awakening process. And when that happened, like that's maybe what some people refer to when you're in like, 40s or 50s and they say, oh, midlife crisis.
Right.
But I call it a midlife awakening.
That's awesome. I'm right there. I'm right there. I just turned 2 weeks ago. I turned 50. 3 weeks ago, I turned 50, and now that I'm 50, I actually feel that my path is just really truly opening up. Like my father said when I was younger, because I used to be a smartass, and he broke it down to me one time. He's like, in your teens, you're finding out that you are. When you're in your 20s, you're finding out who you are. When you're in your 30s, you're finding out what you want to do. In your 40s, you start doing it. In your 50s, you start doing it really well. And that stuck with me. I mean, like almost verbatim. And I've been sharing that with people for a long time. When I was younger, I got into a lot of trouble, and it led to me having a lot of really hard lessons where I put myself at risk and I put other people at risk. And I was diagnosed Ritalin when I was younger. I was really emotionally disconnected. I had suffered a few different kinds of abuse and traumas early in life that had me not trusting and being angry, except I didn't take it out on myself. I took it out on people around me. So I was violent as well. When I say violent, I used to like getting into fights and stuff. At 22 years old, I started working at a summer camp for emotionally impaired kids. And I recognized immediately that these kids were just little Scots because they had the same types of traumas. They had the same kinds of experiences, the same kind of abuses. And so I had the opportunity to say, look, I know where you are. I know what you're going through because I've experienced it. And I'm here to tell you that you can grow up and become a camp counselor, which then was like a huge thing to them. It was like growing up to be an astronaut. It really helped. My personal experience really helped me share that with these children, which really helped our rapport and why I really loved what I was doing. I ended up working at that camp for 15 years. And yeah, isn't that cool? So I started out as an assistant counselor, and then it was over 18 years, but I worked there for 15 of those 18 years. I ended up being the assistant director. And to this day, I'm friends with people that were there as campers when they were in their, 8, 9, 10 years old. It's really cool. I feel your vibe. I feel your energy. I feel your confidence. I know that comes from experience. And so that's why I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that I recognize that and I see that and I know where that comes from. And I really appreciate you sharing that because there's a lot of people that right now they're not 50, they're 20, or they're 15, or they're 25 or whatever. They don't have the experience. We're going to get through this. All we have to do is be strong, stand our guard, be aware of our boundaries, and take action when necessary. That's like the process for me. But there's these young people that don't have that, and they're seeing this world go to shit according to what the media projects people. I think the world is fine. The world is absolutely fine. Human beings are the one that have to make some adjustments. The world isn't going to shit. There's a pivot point, a giant shift in what's going on. Like you said, power structures are shifting, and old stories and old narratives are crumbling apart. The whole, European dominance is over. It's fucking over. We just have to accept it.
Colonialism.
Yeah.
Colonialism.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right on. So when we come back, would you mind, because we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, would you mind speaking to that and maybe giving some advice to people who are sitting at home? And I know you're working on some programs that's designed to help people with that very thing. So I think this is a great place to segue and get into what these people can do, whether they can or cannot participate in your program.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Scott. I'd love to talk about that.
All right. Well, that concludes the first part of our 3-part conversation with Lisa Adams. This conversation was really inspirational, and it really went in some amazing places. I decided to cut it into 3 episodes because I think it would be more palatable to the listener, and I think you'll get a lot more out of it. If you're interested in helping support Emergence Creative Space, please consider being a patron by heading to patreon.com/Emergence Creative Space. Or you can just come by emergencecreativespace.com and sign up to become a contributing member. All right, thank you so much. I really look forward to sharing the rest of this series with you. And until then, let's all take a few moments to count our lucky stars and live in gratitude. All right, let's get inspired.